A river stood between a people and their destiny. It was flood season. The water was rising, and there was no bridge. This is the unbelievable story of how a nation walked through the impossible and came out the other side, changed forever. 40 years. 40 years since their parents had stood at the edge of another sea, watching the water split before them. Now it was their turn, a new generation, born in the wilderness, who had never known a home that didn't move. And ahead of them, the Jordan River, swollen, rushing, overflowing its banks. The season of the harvest was when the river was at its most dangerous. It was an impassable barrier for an entire nation with children and elders. This was the moment God chose. Joshua rises before dawn. He sends officers through the camp, from tent to tent. Watch for the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God. When you see the priests carrying it, move out from your positions and follow it. But keep your distance. Keep a gap between you and the ark, about 2,000 cubits. Over half a mile of open ground between the people and the presence of God, a distance of reverence. So that you may know the way you should go, for you have not passed this way before. They had never been this way before. There was no map, no path, no one who had done this before. The ark would lead. The people would follow. Then Joshua says something that stops every man and woman who hears it. Consecrate yourselves, purify, prepare, set yourselves apart. For tomorrow, the Lord will do wonders among you. That night, a nation waits. But before the night is over, the Lord speaks to Joshua in private. This day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, so that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. Moses had led a generation through the sea. Now Joshua would lead a generation through the river. The same faithfulness, a new servant, under the same hand of the Lord. Morning comes. Joshua gathers the priests. Take up the Ark of the Covenant, he commands them, and pass on ahead of the people. Then, precise instructions, spoken before the whole nation. When you reach the edge of the waters of the Jordan, stand still in the Jordan. Then Joshua turns to all Israel, and he speaks, Come here, hear the words of the Lord your God. The camp falls silent. By this you will know that the living God is among you, not a God of wood and stone, not a God of distant skies, the living God, here, now, moving among you. And he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Hivites and the Perizzites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Jebusites, 7 nations, fortified cities, armies that had never been defeated. And yet, before a single battle, Joshua speaks of them as already defeated, as if it is already done, because for the Lord it already is. Behold, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of all the earth is about to pass before you into the Jordan. And then, one final instruction. Take 12 men from the tribes of Israel, 1 from each tribe, 12 men, set apart, waiting. No one yet knows why, but they will. The priests lift the ark onto their shoulders. They begin to walk. Slowly. The people watch as the ark moves toward the flooded banks of the Jordan, step by step, closer, closer. The sound of rushing water grows louder, and then the priests reach the edge. Every eye in the camp is fixed on them. One more step. Their feet touch the waters of the Jordan, and the river stops. Miles away, at a city called Adam, the miracle begins. The descending waters do not just slow down, they stop. They rise up in a single massive heap, a wall of water towering far upstream. And downstream, the remaining water keeps flowing south until there is nothing left. Only a riverbed. Dry ground, where moments before, a raging, flooded river had been. The priests carry the ark to the edge of the riverbed, and they stop. They stand there, at the edge of what had been a river, holding the ark of the Lord. Still, waiting. Then the people begin to cross. Fathers, carrying children on their shoulders. Mothers, holding their families close. Elders who remembered Egypt. Warriors bearing their weapons. All of them, walking across ground that had been underwater. About 40,000 armed men cross over, heading toward the plains of Jericho. The walls of water hold. The priests stand firm. Not one of them is lost. Then, the 12 men are called forward, one from each tribe. Joshua gives the command, "Pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and let each of you take up a stone upon his shoulder." 12 stones, lifted from the dry bed of the Jordan. That this may be a sign among you. When your children ask in time to come, "What do these stones mean to you?" Then you shall tell them, "The waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. These stones shall be a memorial to the people of Israel forever." Memory matters. What the Lord has done must not be forgotten. The whole nation has crossed. Joshua turns to the priests. "Come up out of the Jordan." And the moment their feet lift from the riverbed and step onto the far bank, the waters return. The Jordan rushes back to its course, flooding again, wild again, overflowing its banks, just as before, as if nothing had happened, and yet nothing would ever be the same. And the word spread. When the kings of the Amorites and the kings of the Canaanites heard what had happened at the Jordan, that the Lord had dried up its waters before the people of Israel, their hearts melted. There was no spirit left in them. The same fear that had filled Jericho when the spies arrived now swept through every throne room in Canaan. Not because Israel was powerful, but because the Lord had gone before them. The people camp at Gilgal. The 12 stones are set up, and Joshua speaks to the generation that has just crossed. When your children ask their fathers, "What do these stones mean?" you shall let your children know. Israel crossed over this Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up its waters before you until you had crossed over, just as the Lord your God did at the Red Sea. The same power that split the sea now stopped the river, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty. The crossing was not just for Israel, it was a declaration to every nation watching that the living God had not changed, had not weakened, and had not forgotten his people. And then, Scripture records something remarkable. On that day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him, just as they had feared Moses all the days of his life. And in that moment, Joshua was exalted in the sight of all Israel. 40 years earlier, their parents had stood at the Red Sea, terrified, trapped, and the waters had opened. Now, a generation later, it happens again, not because Israel was mighty, not because of the strength of man, but because the living God went before them, into the water. First, And perhaps that is the word this story carries across 3,000 years. There are rivers we all face, moments when the path forward seems completely blocked, when the water is too high, the current too strong, the season all wrong. And yet, the Lord does not ask us to figure out how to cross before we step forward. He asks us to move and to watch what He does. The priests did not see the water stop from the riverbank. They saw it stop when their feet were already in the Jordan. That is what faith looks like in Scripture. Not certainty before the step, but trust in the midst of the waters. The nation had crossed. The land lay before them. And the story was just beginning. Subscribe and continue the journey with us.